video is really about having your paint bond to anything and look beautiful, because a lot of people struggle with that. Hey guys and gals, it's Mr. Know-It-All here, and I've got to share something with you on this beautiful Pensacola day. Alright, let's get right at it. Now, plastic, metal, rubber, it doesn't matter what it is. This process works, and you only have to do a couple of things to make that paint bond. When we do metal, we always use a primer. Now remember, when you're doing primer, and light primer for light paint, dark primer for dark paint. Now, in order to get this stuff to bond like you want it to bond, there's a couple of things you got to do. Very simple. Julio, tell everybody where all the tools are at.
Buscar en el show más de la descripción de video para todas las herramientas. Thank
you, Julio, Cesar, Chavez, Rodriguez, Jorge, Johnson, Clint Eastwood. This is a solid brass light switch cover, and this is plastic. If you want your light switch covers to be a different color, you can do this process, and it works great. If you have light switches that are in and they're yellow and you want white covers, they don't match. So all you do is cut a template out. It's real simple, and you clean it the way I'm showing you here, but you will use a towel instead of spraying it on, and you'll wipe all the switches off, and then you'll take your template that you've got cut out, a piece of paper works, over the switches, tape it to the wall, put your plastic down on the floor, and you can paint your switches so they're white and glossy and beautiful, so they match this. I'll show you an example of what I've done, so that you don't have to pull the switches out of the wall. Because when you pull those switches out, if you have an older home, the wires could break, and then you've got, as you know, most of the time the wires are so short inside, then you've opened up a whole can of worms. All you have to do is spray the switches, and you can do it with plug-ins, all of that stuff, so you don't have to pull them out of the wall and replace them for the color that you want. First off, we're going to hit this with Old 99, both of them. And this will remove all the grease and oil, most of it. I like to use old t-shirts, old cotton cloths, wipe it off. And I have one glove on because once I get this clean, I will not touch it with my hand. Just a little bit of grease on your hands and you'll get orange peel. And you want to let them air dry about 20 minutes if you can. Set them out in the sun if you can. If not, hit them with a hair dryer. Dry them up good so there's no fluid down in these holes. The slightest bit of fluid will mess up your paint. But this video is really about having your paint bond to anything and look beautiful, because a lot of people struggle with that. If you can feel it with your fingernail, it needs to be sanded down a little bit, and what we like to use is a little Scotch-Brite and just go over those rough areas. You don't have to scuff it up so it bonds, just getting the rough corrosion off. Our house is about 15 years old, and it didn't take long in the Florida humidity to have these Chinese covers, which I'm sure that's where they were made. Everything is. It's a shame. And the creme de la creme is what I'm going to share with you next. It is a adhesion promoter, and it's awesome. You just spray it on. It'll be in the tools list. Use another clean cloth. And I wipe it off, holding my hand underneath it. Now I'll switch hands, because the last thing I want to do is touch this with my hand. And again, I'll let it dry 10 minutes or so to make sure it's all evaporated. But you can, listen. That's how clean that is. Even though the adhesion promoter doesn't say for metal, promise you, Mr. Know-It-All knows. Listen. Pretty awesome. Now on the metal, we're going to use a primer, and on the plastic, no primer. Because right now, when I put that paint on there, it's not coming off. And it'll be a beautiful glossy white. So let's go get these painted. All right, we've got a rare day here in Pensacola. It's actually raining, and we haven't had rain for a couple of weeks, so I'm kind of thankful for it. I'm painting these outside, so there is a slight mist. We may get a drip off the tree up above. First thing we're going to do is paint the primer on the metal cover. Now, if we can pray that no water drips on that, we'll be good. All right, it's starting to rain out, so I got to take these in. All right, it started raining out, and of course, usually 99% of the time the sun's out, but when I'm doing something like this that I want to do outside, it's raining, so we got a little bit on there. I wiped it off with some adhesion promoter and got off the rain spots that were on it, so we're going to primer this again. I like to put it on heavy. And what I'll do is I'll put 2 coats on that, 2 coats on this. It already looks beautiful. We'll come back in a little bit here and I will paint that white once the primer dries. Alright, I'm speeding up the process with a heat gun. And I can cut the dry time down. In the summertime, you just set it out in the sun, and 5 minutes later in the Florida sun, it's dry. But the adhesion promoter is magnificent. Now it's time for white on the metal cover. There we go. I always like to spray off to the side a little bit, make sure I got a good spray. I'll let that dry, come back and put a second coat on it. Alright, I did the second coat and it looks gorgeous. And the best part of it is I do not have to worry about it coming off or peeling off. And you can wipe it off with a nice cloth with some pledge on it and they'll shine right back up. Let's go in and I'll show you the finished product and what I was talking about with your light switches. Alright, here's the light switch that I did earlier. But isn't that beautiful? I just used a piece of paper towel and I taped it to the wall, and I'll tape it over this and I'll paint these. I'll use the old 99 to wipe these all down. I'll use a Q-tip to get in there to really clean it up good, maybe a toothpick to dig some of that garbage out of there. Then I'll use the adhesion promoter, and that will allow the paint to stick to these. After you paint them, it doesn't take much, just a little mist and you're done. After about a minute, just move the switches up and down, make sure they don't stick, and they will look as beautiful as that one that I just shared with you. Alright, so here's your quick tip. This is on how to remove wax off of your painted wall in your house. For some reason the wax got splattered on here. Most likely somebody tipped a candle over or whatever, but you can see it right here. Real easy process to removing this, and there's 2 different ways to do it. If you're going to be repainting the wall, then you'll have to do it a slightly different way, and I'll let you know on that here. But for just removing it and getting it off your wall, all you have to do is this. You take your plastic razor blade, and if you watch, you'll see it peel right off there. See that? Get the main part of it off. Got some over there I'll get. So let's focus on this. There's something in the paint there. I don't know what that is. I got it. Gotta love these plastic razor blades. They're all on the tools list. All the tools that we use are called Hoolios Tools. Okay, now we'll focus on the worst spot right here. Now, if you're repainting the wall, you can just sand it all off with some 320 grit. go over it with a block and 320 grit and take it all off. Even if you affect the paint, it's not a big deal because you're going to be repainting it. Now, if you are not repainting it, you take your hair dryer. You just warm it up real well. You go over it with a napkin or paper towel. And you just keep doing that. And you slowly get all the wax off. Now we are repainting this. So we'll take our Scotch-Brite and just go over it and sand it right off there. If you push hard enough with this, it'll work, but 320 grit works the best. And it's gone. That's all you have to do. Now all this has got to be sanded down here. Then I have more spots up there, and I have some over here. But that's your quick tip. Very simple to do. Mr. Know-It-All, out.